All right, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relive with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your humble, gracious host, Richie Mars. Thank you for joining me, and we're talking about everything R-Truth. But before we get to that, you could follow me at Retold Richie Mars on Instagram, X, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok. New content every day on TikTok. We just passed 14,000 followers. So thank you so much for each and every one of you that go over there, as well as listen over here for some extra content, some more long form content. And I'm going to be talking about this R-Truth Ron killing situation in more detailed length because, man, it feels like this entire situation has gone on for months and months and months, but in reality, it's only been a couple weeks. Not even a couple weeks, just like a week in general. And for those of you who don't know, last Sunday, I believe, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before then, R-Truth put out a post on social media saying that he was informed that he was being released from WWE and just thank the fans for this ride. He was a star since I believe he signed with WWE in 2008 for this stint. And then right after that, he's been an employee ever since. But he's had stints with WWE in 2001. He went to TNA for a while between 2002 and I believe 2007, 2008. But it's one of those things where I think not a lot of people are going more in depth than they need to be on this because it's either like, oh, WWE TKO bad, Truth didn't deserve it, XYZ. I do agree that WWE brought this upon themselves, but not in a way where it's like they're the evil, bad, mischievous company. It's more of they presented R-Truth, who, for everything that's been said with R-Truth, fantastic performer, great comedy performer. However, WWE wasn't utilizing him in a high-profile situation. He's would always be featured on the show in some way, shape, or form periodically, but with the whole John Cena story, the last real champion, R-Truth being the comedy, John Cena is my favorite superstar growing up. They have the Saturday night's main event match, 4 minutes, give or take. And then R-Truth loses to JC Mateo, and then that weekend, it's like, all right, he was informed he was released. Had WWE not put R-Truth in that situation with John Cena, and then go to him, hey, we're not renewing your contract, I don't think any of this happens to this degree. Because Truth was not a main fixture on television, like I said previously. I think the last thing he probably was on TV consistently was with the Judgment Day stuff, and that was last year, I think. And again, he's not really was a featured guy. And had they didn't put Truth in a storyline with John Cena, who's arguably in the top storyline that WWE is telling currently, I don't think any of this happens nearly to the degree that it does. I think we would get the same posts from stars who really love Truth, and Truth's like such a gem of a human being and is a big morale booster within the locker room, just because I haven't heard anything negative about Truth, and people have gone record saying Truth is probably one of the best people to have in the locker room, and he is a veteran, and he should be treated like a veteran. However, I don't think that WWE had plans to position him in a farewell type of story like they're doing here, and how they course corrected into, I'm not even sure if you could say rehire Truth. They just upgraded him or just like gave him a contract for one last run as Ron Killings. So this run could last a couple weeks, a couple months, years, but as of right now, we don't really know how that's happening. But WWE brought it upon themselves in this whole scenario with R-Truth, because they positioned him in a featured story, and then shortly after that featured story, not even a week, like a little over a week after, they're like, all right, you're done. And of course, people are going to be upset by that because you have Truth, who is, again, a consistent fixture on WWE TV when he's on there, and he's in this top storyline, and then you're just going to let him go. And that's when people were like, oh, we want Truth. And, rightfully so, because, again, WWE gave you something that I don't even think they thought much of. It was just going to be a filler program between John Cena's last title defense at Backlash all the way to Money in the Bank, where we had that tag match with Cody, Jay, and Logan Paul as John Cena's partner. And the entire time, I think people accepted the R-Truth story with John Cena because, it makes sense, the running gag of R-Truth looking up to John Cena and wrestling like John Cena. And then, it's a good, like, intermittent storyline where it's like, all right, we have this story that we could kind of tie up this loose end and then kind of move on from there. But then with Truth, what I found interesting the day before when they had Truth cut that promo, hyping up his Saturday night's main event match with Cena, the crowd was giving him the what treatment. And for me, I'm just like, it's such like a very big turn of events where it's like Truth's promo style has a very like, the pauses in between, and Truth's not the only one to do this because there are many other people who do what treatments. But usually when people do the what treatment, it's not usually in an endearing way. It's more of a disinterest kind of way. And you heard that during the night's Raw when Truth made his return, switching from R-Truth to Ron Killings. And some of the crowd was whatting him. And I got so frustrated with that personally because I'm like, you guys are chanting, we want Truth. And Truth's cutting a promo, like biggest reaction that he's had in at least a decade. Biggest spot he's been in at least a decade. And there are people who are just whatting him. You know what I mean? And thankfully Truth did shut down those chants a little bit so people got to listen, but it just kind of shows that at least within like some of the wrestling space, you're going to have people who, oh yeah, we're going to be with this movement, but they're going to like, it's like you're going to bandwagon hop a little bit. And, it is what it is with any fandom. There are going to be people who claim to want one thing, but then the new shiny toy comes and then they go for the other thing. It happens like that in anything in professional wrestling. Professional wrestling is a very big, what have you done for me lately type of like industry, where if you're not consistently giving the fans something new, or if you're staying too consistent without little or minimal change, then people are going to grow disinterested. And that's like anything with any forms of media or any forms of entertainment. If you're not keeping your audience engaged, they're going to be disinterested in it. And with wrestling, because there's so many colorful characters and there's so many characters that people believe are underutilized, they're going to be quick to chant or voice their displeasure or acceptance on what's going on. Now, this isn't the first time that WWE thought about letting a talent go, releasing a talent, and then brought them back in short order. We had Matt Hardy in 2005 with the whole Edge and Lita situation, and WWE released Matt Hardy because he made some public comments about the situation online, and people were outraged by that because they felt Edge and Lita were in the wrong, and Matt was responding appropriately for the situation at hand, and WWE was like, oh, well, Edge is going to be the bigger star of the two anyway, so we'll just cut our losses with Matt because he's kind of like the fall guy in this situation. But then they brought him back, they did business. Edge, Matt Hardy was probably a pivotal feud for both their careers at that time period. I think they both elevated each other up to another level, Edge more so than Matt at that point. And then you had Drake Maverick during the pandemic era with WWE, where he was announced as one of the releases, but they were going to allow him to wrestle within the WWE NXT Cruiserweight Championship tournament, which I think was like the round robin tournament that they had. And at the end of the show, they made the whole tournament a storyline where Drake Maverick was going to win the Cruiserweight Championship, And because of that, he would retain his job with WWE. Of course, he lost in the finals, but then at the end, you got Triple H signing Drake Maverick to a contract, got it emotional. So it's not within the WWE realm to not make a story out of somebody's legitimate firing or release or contract expiring. I mean, CM Punk's whole entire big story about the summer of Punk in 2011 was about him legitimately leaving WWE. And he's gone on record saying, yeah, I had to sign an extension just to make it to Money in the Bank because we weren't sure how the story was going to conclude. So again, WWE using real life contractual situations for storyline, nothing new. So people pretending like this is a first time for WWE, it's not. And I think a lot of people are kind of pressed with Triple H and TKO because obviously it's like they did make the call to cut Truth, whether it's a financial reason, which is probably the most likely issue, or just not renegotiating at all. Again, there's not enough information out there to know if this negotiation was going to be more of a, we're just letting you go, or we want you to transition more to a Legends deal. But from the vibe that I'm seeing so far was more like, all right, we're just going to let you go, little no fanfare, you can do what you want. And, it's kind of anticlimactic for a guy who's been with your company for 17 years at this point in this run. And, rightfully upset by it because it's like, really, that's it? Like, after all these years, like, I'm just going to leave like that, positive force in the locker room, good soldier, been doing what I asked, and like that's it, okay, and like I would be a little bit like taken aback by it too if I had works of service and then it's like, all right, here you go. But sometimes that's how business works, and with wrestling it's a very emotionally charged business where it's just sometimes professional wrestling doesn't love you back, or like anything that you invest your time, your blood, sweat, tears into, sometimes you're not going to get the benefit of receiving like payment or accolades comparable towards the loyalty that you've been giving to a company. Just is what it is. And I know like Triple H's press conference response got a lot of people talking. Like for me, was what it was. I don't expect him to be honest or reveal the entire situation because it's an ongoing story. They do want to keep that mystery of like, is it real? Is it not real? They want to control the narrative. Like any company who does damage control, they're going to try to control the narrative. And I'm not surprised that it's like, oh, it's like, why don't they just like admit they were wrong or anything like that? And the thing is, like, I do agree the situation was from their own doing, and they handled the situation initially. I think they kind of like tried to pull stuff that probably would have been more accepted within the old WWE, but now what we're seeing that's different, from the whole Matt Hardy situation, Drake Maverick, CM Punk situation, is that WWE and TKO very quickly course corrected it. I mean, the entire, I guess, Ron Killings R-Truth saga occurred within a week time span. You know what I mean? And back in old WWE, if this was like Vince in charge, I think his heels would have been like dug in. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, if he makes a decision, if he releases somebody, unless it's like a prolonged period of time of just like, just people chanting or like outrage from fans or anything like that, he wouldn't hire them back. Even like the whole Daniel Bryan release, when the whole Nexus thing happened, with the Daniel Bryan choking with the tie and then spitting in John Cena's face, and then he was let go because they had to make an example out of somebody. He wasn't brought back, I think, a month or two even. So even then, it was still kind of like a delayed thing. And, I'm happy that Truth's back. I'm happy that WWE saw the value in what Truth can bring. And they're definitely going to monetize Ron Killings, which was apparently by Truth's request and one of his requests to coming back to WWE. was go under his real name. So, like, if he does outside projects, he will have the equity that's advertised as Ron Killings to any of these outside projects, which I think is super smart for him to do because, he does outside projects, whether it's his music stuff. I think he's done a little bit of acting, not much. I know he had a bit part in The Wrestler, but I'm not sure if that's something he would want to do. But to have the Ron Killings name and that equity out there, so it's a smoother and easier transition. So if he were to do wrestling in other companies or do other projects, the Ron Killings brand name is being advertised in WWE. So, like, again, very smart move by Truth. For this whole story where it's like he's kind of like an outsider, as of now, as of this press recording, this is taped or recorded. Who tapes things anymore? The day after his promo on WWE Raw, where he cut his locks and saying R-Truth is no more, now it's Ron Killings. The thing is, it's like, if you were just a person who was watching the television show week to week, and you had no idea this whole entire thing was going on, which is, very few, but there are going to be some casual fans who just watch the television show. They're not going to follow closely on what occurs on the internet. Like, there's not really going to be, like, any semblance of transition or story, logical sense of what happened with Truth. Now he's like a completely different character if you're watching SmackDown when his loss with JC Mateo, and now you watch this Raw that happened a week later, and it's like, why is Truth on Raw now? And I think it's just one of those things where they're trying to play off the reality of the situation, but they don't want to put WWE or TKO in a negative light, which, again, makes sense. You don't want to put your own brand name in that negative light, and especially with them selling, like, multiple pieces of Truth merch. I think he has, like, I know they're reselling, easy for me to say, one shirt that was back in February, but they came out with 3 new shirts, and they're just monetizing the Ron Killings name, which I'm glad that they're giving people options of participating in buying Truth merch. But for me, if you're trying to portray him as like an outside the force, like, that was let go by the company, but then they came back to terms, it just kind of like, for me, it takes away a little bit of it. It's kind of like with CM Punk, if, like, after the pipe bomb, he would come out in new merchandise that they were selling right away. It would take the feeling away of the rebelness of what's going on. And I do think the Ron Killings character is going to be very interesting moving forward. But with WWE and TKO and what we have currently and what the business model is it's a lot more about monetization. It's about sponsors. It's about the more you monetize the product, the more that people are going to buy it if they portray it a certain way, which is, again, their prerogative, their business model. But the thing is, I'm just going all over the place just because there's just so many things I want to talk about concerning, like, the whole R-Truth situation. Like, the whole Triple H quote of, like, USA Today asked him, was the contract expiration a part of the show, or was it legitimate? And Triple H said, I love the question. Are you having a good time? And the USA Today reporter said yes, and Triple H said all part of the show. Initially, when I heard that, I took it as, if you're enjoying the product, then that's a part of the show, And sometimes reality of situations are going to be weaved into a part of the show. Was it the plan all along? I don't think so. And I'm kind of not, like, surprised, but it's like people shouldn't be shocked that Triple H is, like, going to be coy about it because of this ongoing story. And 2, it's like you don't want to put the company within a bad presentation with. And I know that Truth's son spoke up and said stop the cap, saying, like, with Triple H saying what he said was, like, this was always a part of the show. And I think a lot of people can tell it's not a part of the show. Personally, I don't care if it was a part of the show, not a part of the show. Like, Truth is getting paid. That's all I care about. He's getting paid probably handsomely. He's going to be part of a bigger part of the television show itself because of it, and everything was positive coming from the We Want Truth movement, where it's like Truth, the fans made their voices heard. The superstars made their voices heard, voicing their displeasure in it. And it wouldn't surprise me if it was more of the pushback of the talent rather than the actual stars in the back that wanted this to go a little bit forward. Because if you have like a long tenured guy like Truth and a well liked guy, and then they're just releasing him like nothing, you're gonna have a lot of distrust within the locker room. If it's like, oh wow, if they're gonna do that to this guy right here who's been loyal to 17 years, what's that gonna do with me? And I think that's how WWE TKO overplayed their hand a little bit, where it's like, I don't think anybody was thinking, it's like, the locker room's not going to be in an uproar over this, because it's like, makes sense. We're not utilizing him like that justifies his pay. Like, again, I don't know how much Truth was getting paid. I know some people were saying it was a little bit over $500,000 a year, but again, don't know. I don't care about figures that much. But a lot of people, I think, use the "We Want Truth" movement or story to whatever to kind of like it's tough to say, because I don't think a lot of people are like big R-Truth fans. Obviously, he does have like a very solid fan base, but it's like there wasn't an outcry of Truth being a part of WrestleMania this year. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't a big outcry of having Truth being a more prominent position on the card. It was more of the situation itself and the WWE TKO situation. And it was just one of those straw that broke the camel's back when it comes to how people are perceiving WWE and TKO to be treating their talent, whether it's positively or negatively. But there's a lot of people who are coming into WWE now kind of like part way through. Like, a lot of people during the build to Cody and the whole Roman bloodline storyline are still relatively new fans, so it's kind of foreign to them how talents will get released and how they're getting let go. And these releases are different mostly because it's like some people are getting cut, but they're also letting contracts expire. And I'm not sure how late negotiations usually are for WWE TKO. I know Drew McIntyre's contract wasn't what wasn't like renewed or in discussions until relatively close to his end date. And I think that's what WWE, and again, this is all a theory that I have. Like, it's not validated anywhere. But WWE and TKO are trying to get to as close as the negotiation period as possible, so it gives stars less leeway in negotiations. Now, again, not sure if it's true. I'm not sure if that's how TKO WWE wants to change things or do things, or that's how it's always been, but it seems like they kind of want to leverage the situation towards their favor, which is what any company does. But the people who are like saying, "Oh, it's a work, it's this, it's that. Thank you, Triple H. Thank you, Papa." Like, I find it kind of odd when anybody. It's not just WWE, but if anyone's like pro company like WWE, AEW, they're like, "Oh, it's Papa H, Papa Tony." Like, I just, it makes me feel weird. I'm just like, I watch WWE, I watch AEW, but like, people like get really into championing their brand, which I understand. You're a fan of the brand, you're a fan of the product, but I feel like people take that step too far, and there's room for nuance within the conversation when it comes to the good in WWE, the bad in WWE, same thing with the good in AEW, bad in AEW, and there are people who could be honest and talk about criticisms, or they'll go over the top and be like, "Oh, this is the worst thing that ever happened in life." I'm like, all right, cool. And I just feel like people are more obsessed with fan bases rather than being fans themselves. And there are going to be people who are going to attack you for your fandom. And I don't understand why, because it doesn't really have anything to do with you. Just the minimal experience that I've had within content creation and people being outspoken. Like, if you say anything that's slightly, even remotely a little bit against the popular norm, like, people are going to have a problem with it, and people are going to like say you're XYZ as a person. I'm like, okay. Like, I've had people like say, "Oh, you're not a fan," and I'm like, "Oh, I've actually been through this wrestling show that you say I'm not a fan of, but it's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. All right, guess I spent my own money for nothing. But I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. But with the whole truth situation, I really am kind of in the camp that some people were using the We Want Truth more as a kind of like a discussion point with their displeasure with WWE, because the We Want Truth thing was more of just like saying either, hey, we're displeased with the product and this is kind of like the consequences in that. It's not that they're not like super duper fans of truth. It's more of like, this is the evil WWE company, which again, it's a company. It's going to do whatever it needs to do within its realm in order to, make a profit, which is what TKO is concerned about, what WWE was concerned about as well. And people want to bring upon it's like, oh, TKO has $3 billion in debt. But when they bought WWE, no one really talks about this. They were already $2.7 billion in debt. And not only that, there are other businesses, I think I looked up, like Verizon has like $100 billion in debt. Like TNT Sports has $10 billion in debt. So it's like, yeah, they're going to cut costs, but they're also paying that debt back. So it's not going to change as much of WWE and their way of doing business, because seasonal releases have been a thing for WWE. When new people come in, old people come out. It's going to be the same for every single wrestling company. That's just how it is. And for people to kind of be like, oh, they changed, man, they changed. The only thing that's changed really for me that's been more abundant has been the advertisements. And some of them I really think are humorous, like, climbing the fireball ladder to get money in the bank, or tables literally snapping into a Slim Jim with Slim Jim logos, which I find pretty funny. But I could understand if it's an eyesore for people. It's an eyesore for me sometimes because it just seems like it's very loud and in your face. But I've watched it when I would watch UFC, like all the advertisements, so it doesn't really bother me that much. Not saying it's like I'm a fan of these advertisements. It's me and my buddy. Don't follow David if you watch here, my buddy. We'll watch the PLEs and whatever they have sponsored as a joke. We'll just like get them as our snacks, whether it's like Papa John's or Slim Jims or Prime, and we do it for a bit because we think it's funny. We think it's humorous. Some people might say, "Oh, that's a sheep thing to do." Okay, cool. I'm having fun watching wrestling. And that's the main thing. It's just like, no matter what people think about this whole R-Truth situation, I think it's great that this guy got his job back. He has a renewed lease on life when it comes to a character. He gets to portray himself a little bit more seriously and end his WWE run on a higher note than probably anybody was expecting him to. And it just seems like this whole situation, people are using it more as a defense of WWE or an attack on WWE, and it really shouldn't be that way. What really won was people who wanted this guy to get his flowers for his work that he's done with the company. And I think that should be more where the focus is, but instead a lot of the fan base, in my opinion, is focused more on attacking fans, whether they think it's a real life thing that happened or this was all part of the story. Personally, like I said in the beginning, don't care. Like, the guy is getting paid. All I care about. Guy's going to get more prominent position on television. That is a good thing. And there are people who kind of prioritize trying to, a gotcha moment on, fans or fandoms, whether it's... And the thing is, I think the whole tribalist argument, there are more WWE fans than AEW fans. It just is, because WWE is the premier product when it comes to wrestling because it's been around for 50 plus years. Or 70 plus years, something like that. And AEW's only been around for 5-6 years. And there are going to be people who are going to say nasty things about one promotion over the other. And just by statistically, you're going to have more fans who prefer WWE over AEW just because of the longevity factor. However, it's you shouldn't really care how people watch wrestling. For me, instantly, it's if you watch WWE, AEW, TNA, New Japan, CMLL, AAA, Stardom. Uh, oh gosh, I had another promotion on the brain, but it's not like coming to me. Like GCW is one. Uh, if you're a fan of any kind of wrestling, it's like that's your prerogative, And I feel like people are more focused on how others view wrestling than they themselves watching wrestling and enjoying and consuming the product that they enjoy the most. And if that's WWE, if that's AEW, GCW, TNA, New Japan, AAA, CMLL, again, it's one of those things that gets a little bit of exhausting for me, like talking point wise, because I'm just like, look, wrestling's kind of thriving right now, because when I came into wrestling, the only things I could watch on television was Raw, SmackDown, Velocity, and Heat. Just WWE. But then, Spike TV picked up TNA Wrestling, which I'm like, all right, cool. I get another option in there, more wrestling. And then AEW comes on, and then I'm just like, oh, cool, more wrestling. More things to consume, more people getting paid within wrestling in general. And I feel like a lot of people are just kind of focused more on the behind the scenes nature of it, and with people being upset with Triple H not peeling back the curtain, and they're like, oh, they said they were going to peel back the curtain of this WWE Unreal show, where they're going to show the production of WWE and stuff. Yeah, the thing is, WWE, professional wrestling, anything, it's entertainment based on deception. And I don't mean deception as like a negative connotation where it's like, oh, they're deceiving you, they're putting out a false product. But when it comes to professional wrestling overall, they're trying to sell you on an entertainment of a story that is real within the realm of what they're portraying. Like, person A and person B most likely don't hate each other. Their characters hate each other in the realm of the match that they're in. However, I think a lot of people within wrestling are obsessed on what's real and what's not. And if that's like, oh, these two really don't like each other, and that's what's making this feud great, But sometimes people do their jobs really well, where it's like, oh, wow, these two are actually cool outside. And I think a lot of people, at least within WWE, they wanted to make that distinction, with WWE being show and UFC being UFC. And I think that's why we're getting the WWE Unreal show, is because TKO really wants to make that distinction between UFC and WWE as separate products, because people, believe it or not, do confuse the two. However, I think I do find the irony of it, where it's like people did not like the WWE Unreal product as like a concept. Personally, it's like, for me, I'm gonna watch it. Like, I'm able to separate, behind the scenes stuff from what I see on television. It doesn't really affect me much, because like, if I don't want to watch it, I just don't watch it. But there are going to be like more talking points out there, because everybody wants to see what's going on backstage. But it's most importantly, you have to realize with the WWE Unreal, just because it's going to be real events that are occurring, we're only going to see as much of the real product as they're willing to show us. Where we're going to see like how things are going to be planned, but we're not going to see the entirety of the story. We're going to see a version of the truth, but not the absolute truth. And the tie into there, where I say it's ironic, because people don't like this WWE Unreal show, but then Triple H doesn't give you the real answer of the R-Truth Ron Killing situation. And it's like, do you want to know the truth, or do you not want to know what's behind the curtain, kind of thing? And I understand two completely different situations. Like, it's easy for WWE to say, hey, we screwed up, our bad. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not sure if that's the way to go, because then after, if they say, hey, we screwed up, it's on us. And this goes for any business that says that. It opens up more opportunity for any, even if it's like a minor discrepancy or a minor mistake, you're going to open up to, well, it worked with the R-Truth situation. They did this mistake. All we need to do is just make our voices heard even louder, and then they're going to bend the knee to us for every single thing that happens. And that's why with things like the Daniel Bryan situation, like the Matt Hardy situation, like the Drake Maverick situation, they like to gear the narrative into their own lens, where it's like, okay, we got to control the narrative. So it's like we could give the people what they want, but we can't give them total control on what's going on because we still have a product that we're trying to push out to advertisers and whatnot. And that's the main thing about it. Why Triple H didn't say, hey, our bad. Like, this was our mistake. Now, do I think it would hurt business? Not necessarily, but I could understand the fears on accepting that, hey, we made a mistake. Like, we corrected that mistake. The thing is, it's like I'm big on actions, and their actions are, hey, we realized we made a mistake. We brought him back. We're going to go with him for a story. And my main fear with this whole R-Truth situation is that, okay, now he's back, now what? You know what I mean? Where it's like, the John Cena heel turn, whether it was planned for Elimination Chamber or planned somewhere else or not even planned at all, you get 3 weeks of John Cena essentially cutting very similar promos back to back before WrestleMania. And then people, as of this recording, have been dissatisfied with John Cena's heel turn because it's like, oh, it could have been so much more. But reality is with John Cena, there's not really much he can do in terms of in-ring action. If you look at his matches, very... I like finisher spammy, like, but Cena's always kind of been finisher spammy towards the end. But very limited, very slow, very methodical. And that's never really been John's style. And he's working heel for the first time in about 20 years. And I think a lot of people expected the John Cena, like, you know, US Open Challenge, SmackDown, 2016 John Cena, where he's just like doing like in-ring stuff just for the sake of it. Like he was pulling off Hurricane Rana's, Code Reds, like it was nothing. But now you have a very different John Cena. And for me, my expectations were, all right, we're going to get the John Cena we saw against Solo Sikoa, against Austin Theory, which were passable performances, but they're not going to be great, if that makes any sense. Like with John Cena, like even he himself said he's a step behind. And with R-Truth, we haven't really seen R-Truth, Ron Killings in a serious program since probably 2011. And I'm curious to see how a John Cena or Ron Killings match is and the fan reaction towards it. Because it wasn't like anybody was clamoring for the in-ring product of John Cena versus R-Truth. They just wanted to see the story of R-Truth versus John Cena just because it's a neat tie-in with the whole storyline they concocted a couple years ago about R-Truth growing up, seeing his childhood idol John Cena, even though R-Truth is 53 and John Cena is 48. But with R-Truth, Ron Killings, whatever you want to call him, this situation, I am happy for the man. He gets to end the career on a very big high note. I don't think anybody expected it. I don't think anybody's objecting towards this Ron Killings character transformation. And I'm just along for the ride to see how it's being pulled off, what kind of story they have him going out on. Is his last match going to be against John Cena on this retirement tour? Is he going to get a championship run? Is he going to peter out? Is his popularity going to kind of fizzle out because they're going to see him too often, too much, and then it just kind of loses its luster a little bit? There's a lot of questions, and I'm very curious to see which path this story takes. And I think it's safe to say that it's grabbed people's attention, that segment on Raw where he just cut off his hair and then denounced the R-Truth name and then embraced Ron Killings. Got a lot of people probably hyped up to see what's going on, but I'm kind of keeping my expectations in check because, again, I'm just kind of like, all right, this is an unplanned story. Now, can WWE make it great? Sure, we've seen unplanned stories be great to good all the time. But there are some times where it's like, all right, we're just going to give you kind of like the 1, 2, 3 story where it's like, all right, there's a beginning, a middle, and end. Nothing too surprising that happens within the middle, but it's kind of like paint by numbers. And with Ron Killings, it's going to be interesting to see how the fans grow attached to him, or are they just so belovedly attached to R-Truth that Ron killings people won't be as gravitated towards. So I'm very interested to see that. I'm sure it's going to be fine regardless, and I'm excited to see it. But that's going to do it for my, I guess, thoughts, my rambling thoughts on the Ron killing situation, people's reactions to it, and just going here, there, everywhere overall. And I don't get a lot of time to do these solo episodes, but pretty cool. Pretty cool to just talk to the listener out there. Kind of like a one-sided conversation. But please let me know what you think about the whole Ron killings or truth situation. You could comment below if you're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast reviews for any of those platforms are greatly appreciated. If you want more content, I do short form content on TikTok. I usually try to post multiple videos a day. Again, we just passed 14K followers. Really appreciative of that. Thank you so much if you're a follower. If you found this podcast from there, I really do appreciate it. I just have fun talking about wrestling. It's really nothing too kooky, nothing too mind-blowing out there. Even if I am disinterested or don't like a story, or if I do like or love a story, I still like and love watching wrestling either way. I've watched it so much that there's nothing really much for me to like complain about, because like the business is thriving. I think there's always good within professional wrestling, and I feel like a lot of people, and this is not just wrestling, just any media, will try to focus on the negatives a lot more, because negative content usually gets pushed out a little bit more because it's more of a strong reactionary piece. But for me, I'm mostly positive about anything that's happening within the wrestling product. Even if I have like a negative interaction, it's like I don't really see it as a negative, because like someone was so I emotionally had somebody where it's just kind of like, oh, they felt emotional enough to comment on something that I said, and that never was the case. I still remember when I only had a couple hundred followers, and then I was lucky to get one comment. Now I'm blessed that I get several comments on a selective video, and it used to be like 20 likes was like a big deal, but now it's like, oh wow, now it's like, now I get like 1,000 likes consistently. So it's like, it's really cool to be in this position. I always try to give everybody the content that I want to be proud of, and there's sometimes where it's like I'm not proud of video content sometimes, just because I'm like, oh, I could have said something here. It's like, oh, I could have said something here, edit video here, I could have made this point here. But again, that's kind of like in life, I'm kind of like on this content journey for about a year, 2 years now, and now it's like I have like a cool flow with it. And now I'm finally coming back to the podcast a little bit more, just to see and push out like things I want to talk about, which is cool being like your own boss in that regard, where it's like the content, where it's like, yeah, I could talk about things on TV like I am doing right now, but I could also talk about past things. But I'm rambling on a little bit too much. But thank you so much for listening. If you got this far, again, you could always follow me at the aforementioned links down below, the @ at Retold Richie Mars at pretty much everything. So yeah, I look forward for the reactions to this episode, future episodes, and TTFN, ta-ta for now, and I will see you next time.